I want to hand over again to John B. and to Dr. Eve Gatsikwa. John and Dr. Eve, start from the beginning.
Thank you very much, Ayabonga. Okay, so I'll introduce myself once more. I'm Eve Gatsikwa. I'm the Director General of the Standards Association of Zimbabwe. And my continental mandate, I'm the past president of the African Organization for Standardization, which is the AU, standardization body that has been set up, on the continent with the mandate of harmonizing standards on the continent. And specifically, the role of standards, we'll hear more about it in my presentation, but essentially, we just are looking at how we can help the continent in respect of the various businesses that are on the continent at the moment, in terms of growing our productive base, which is really important now that we're, implementing a single market, as well as a greater, creating a greater efficiency on the continent. Again, that's the role of standards. And thirdly, also the role that standards are going to play on the continent, under the African Continental Free Trade Area, in respect of the value chains, the markets that are going to be very important under the single market. John.
Thank you, Eve, and thank you, Ayabonga. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. I'm very honoured to be part of this fantastic event. I've been listening into some of the sessions earlier this morning, and really inspirational presentation stories from the young entrepreneurs all over the continent. My role, I basically coordinate our regulatory and scientific affairs teams across 48 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, dealing with the regulatory landscapes in those countries. I'm based in our research centre in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. About Nestlé in Africa, we've been on the continent for over 100 years. We have 12,500 plus employees in 24 factories. We have 75,000 direct suppliers and many hundreds of thousands of farmers who are supplying us. Bringing it back to the framing concept of shared value, our mission is enhancing quality of life and contributing to a healthier future. We were an early pioneer of creating shared value, working with Mark Kramer and others, for the past 15 years on the concept. And we're very sure that our core activities need to make a positive difference to society while contributing to our ongoing success. And that could be things like affordable fortified products, or it could be developing smallholder farmer capacity in our supply chains. Turning to what we know currently about the African Continental Free Trade Area, first of all, there's a bit of uncertainty as to whether the projected go-live date of 1st of July will actually hold, given the current COVID situation. The last thing I saw was an article by the Secretariat last week saying that they're looking for feedback from the heads of state before a final decision is taken. Let's remember, however, that 1st of July means removal or reduction of tariffs between the member states. And even when that happens, there is going to be an exclusion list of products that or services that cannot represent more than 3% of a country's trade, and there will be a list of sensitive products the member states can exempt for a certain amount of time. And, that won't last forever, but it will impact the initial implementation. One thing that we should probably bear in mind is that most forecasters are seeing the initial impact being at regional economic community level, so there's going to be enhanced trade within the regional economic communities before it happens at a continental level. However, in the longer term, we know that there are ambitions for trade deals between the African Union and, for example, the European Union. Now, as I said, when this kicks off, it's really about tariffs, but I think everybody observing this area recognizes that the bigger challenge is technical barriers to trade and non-tariff barriers, and that speaks right to Eve's area of expertise, standards and standards harmonization. I think that, we see across Africa there are very many vertical product or material standards. Sometimes you don't see even harmonization within regional economic communities. And there are exponentially high costs of transportation. I think one of the speakers in the previous session alluded to this. That a container coming from Europe to Durban, for example, can cost 1/3 of the cost of moving that container onto a neighbouring country, even within SADC, just because of the time involved in crossing borders. So turning to how this all is going to impact young people and what the relationship with creating shared value and all of that within the context of COVID-19. Well, before this crisis, as many other speakers have said, the demographic dividend equaled simultaneous opportunities and risks. And entrepreneurship was very much seen, and is still very much seen, as the optimum route to absorbing the 10 million young Africans who enter the labour market every year. And I heard Fred Swannaker speak about this very eloquently earlier. Also, before COVID, AfCFTA was supposed to provide a stimulus to create economic growth, and many observers, ministers, are saying that this growth needs to be inclusive. UNCTAD is saying it, UNESCO is saying it. And also COVID-related reports are saying that the winning companies are those that are demonstrating solidarity with the communities that they serve, and they're going to be remembered for that coming out of this. So I think the perspective for young entrepreneurs is, if you bake creating shared value in, societal value into your concept right from the start, you will be rewarded, it will be expected. Possibly more than it was 2 decades ago. So the first, that's sort of the first idea I wanted to get out there. And these, the answers that they have, the propositions that the young entrepreneurs are bringing, maybe they can start to think right from the get-go beyond their borders. Is there a supply chain where it makes sense to access supplies in a neighbouring country? Is there a ready market for the product or service that you have in a neighbouring country or one within your regional economic community? I think that the second idea is that with the African Continental Free Trade Area, it does give young entrepreneurs accelerated opportunities to make their offering available beyond borders. It's not really because of tariff reductions, but they have to be adept at recognising and reporting technical barriers to trade. This could include, for example, calls to harmonise standards, reduce administrative burdens, and if they add their voices to the calls for more harmonisation as we operationalise Continental Free Trade Area, they will be listened to, because it's generally recognised that youth entrepreneurship is the future. And the last idea I'd like to put there is that large firms can be a part of this. They can benefit from and kickstart youth entrepreneurship. Now, we at Nestlé focus both on employability, so for the All for Youth initiative that we're part of, that you can see behind us, so we're involved in that with other companies like Bolloré, MTN, Nielsen, Siemens. That's delivering 6,000 opportunities for young people to grow their employability skills this year, and 11,000 next. But we're also focusing on entrepreneurship. So if you go around a West African city, you will see around 3,000 Nescafé pushcart operators. We give those pushcart operators the business skills. It's interesting to hear a comment from one of the speakers, I think it was Rosine on the earlier panel, where she said, "Oh, I didn't have any skills in agribusiness. I'm an accountant." Well, my goodness, that's an immensely powerful skill to have in running any business. If you can't manage the money, you can't manage the business. So it's exactly those skills that we try to teach, and for our market sellers, for our pushcart operators. And the other thing, agripreneurship, we just signed a deal with IDH to, right in the middle of COVID, by the way, to build capacity, to build skills with 25,000 farmers and 250 rural small and medium enterprises that facilitate, if you like, the farming ecosystem in Ghana and Nigeria. We've got another 2,000 partnership with Agra. We've got entrepreneurship initiatives with Ashoka. We've got our own innovation challenge that we're running with universities and startups around the continent to help us solve some of the issues around affordable nutrition or sustainability that we have challenges with. So I'll stop there. I've gone on too long and I'll hand it over to Eve. But as you can tell, I'm immensely passionate about this. And I think there are immense opportunities for AfCFTA to really benefit youth entrepreneurship. Is AfCFTA fit for purpose to do that right now? I'm not entirely sure it is, but maybe this debate can move that on a little bit. So Eve, I'm sorry, I've gone on too long. Eve, I think you're on mute.
Yes, sorry about that. I was enjoying listening to your, discussion there. I mean, I'm learning new words, agripreneurship, socialpreneurship, all those different words that are coming up. Very exciting. And thanks for highlighting the aspect of the shared value, which is why exactly we're having this chat, to encourage youth entrepreneurs, young people to go beyond borders and also profit with purpose. A very interesting concept indeed. And also highlighting the fact that, the go live date it will be delayed inevitably because of the COVID-19 situation. But nevertheless, I just wanted to just pose some questions which don't have to be answered here, obviously, in the interest of time. The question is, are youth familiar actually with the principles and the benefits and the challenges that are actually involved in going beyond borders, and how can we actually support the youth entrepreneurs to make sure that they go beyond borders under the African Continental Free Trade Area? And then the issue of production. What mechanisms and what tools do we have to make them more productive, to make them more efficient, and to access these new markets and the value chain? So I'll ask for the support to put up my first slide. I just have a few talking points that I wanted to share with you as we go through this very, very briefly. I'm not going to take a lot of time on this. So basically, next slide, please. The question that we are all asking ourselves is, can the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, be a solution to our youth going forward as they are trying to create new opportunities? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, we've already heard that the new Continental Free Trade Area, which was actually launched on the 30th of March, creates a huge opportunity for youth, and we all know that the market size, equivalent to 1.2 billion people, meaning that there is a huge unrealized potential for entrepreneurs to work with. And then this accounts for between 2.5 to 4 trillion dollars of spending investment, meaning that depending on which resource you're looking at, there is an opportunity for spending and for investment. But then the question now that comes up is, what exactly should the entrepreneurs be aware of in respect to the creating this single market? What is it that the entrepreneurs need to be aware of? The issue of training, I think that has come up very clearly, that entrepreneurs must therefore be adequately trained in order for them to be able to not only sell their products and services, but also to package them correctly so that these products can actually meet the expectations of the continental markets. The other aspect as well is there's need for our youth entrepreneurs to be aware of the procedures that are involved, the issues around TBTs, which are the technical barriers to trade, the issues around the customs processes, the quality requirements, because the single market is going to be requiring, new requirements, obviously, in terms of quality and safety of these products. And then the entrepreneurs also need to understand the financing issues around financing and how this financing can be made available. And also, entrepreneurs must also produce their goods and services which are actually demanded on the continent. Because it's all well and good producing a product, but if it's not needed, then really there's no point. So our efforts must really be to identify the products that are required and meet the needs of the market. And lastly, entrepreneurs must also leverage on the digital and opportunities under the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm sure young people don't have any problems in that area, because the whole idea of the fourth industrial revolution is how the continent can leapfrog to, take advantage of this huge market it's now available. Next slide, please. So this is just, a presentation that really shows that there are many opportunities, but there are also many challenges. And some of the issues that I'm going to just highlight in respect of the Agenda 2063, we all know what that is the Africa we want by 2063. And, the African Continental Free Trade Area, of course, is the stepping stone towards this vision that we want by the time we get to 2063. The strong, influential global player, we all want to become that. Our entrepreneurs need to recognize the fact that, it's time for us to wake up and realize that we can become formidable on the continent and beyond. The need for us to develop people-driven solutions, meaning that there's a lot of emphasis now on making sure that we invest in our young people and that they need to understand what is needed. The governance issues have already been highlighted, as well as making Africa prosperous, having political unity and an integrated Africa. This is huge because, especially when you speak about standards, the biggest challenge on the continent that makes it difficult for us to trade with each other as countries is the fact that we were all using vertical standards. But now we are saying we now need to make use of harmonized standards. And I was just speaking with you during the break to say, we've come a long way. We've actually harmonized quite a lot of these standards, making it easier for us to trade, making it easier for us to integrate the continent, and so that our products are accepted. Of course, peaceful environment and a secure Africa, and also having strong cultural identity and being proud of our Africanness and our African products and packaging our products as such, because our products have value, especially when they're well branded. So these are some of the issues. Next slide, please. So looking at the objectives, just to underscore, what exactly are we trying to prove, or what exactly are we trying to actually do under the African Continental Free Trade Area? What are the objectives? We want to create a liberalized single market for goods and services by progressively eliminating barriers to trade. This is what we're trying to do under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We also want to contribute to free movement of capital and persons for investment through the member states. We also want to promote and also to attain sustainable and inclusive social development across the continent. We also want to enhance the competitiveness of economies of these member states. And lastly, industrial development, leveraging on the fourth industrial revolution. I keep underscoring the fourth industrial revolution because we cannot do all of this, without realizing that technology and innovation are going to be very critical. It doesn't matter whether you're a small scale farmer or whether you are into food production or energy or health, you will still require a level of innovation and also a level of making sure that you take use of technologies. We have the artificial intelligence, the blockchains, all of this will come to the play. So this shared value concept, as far as I'm concerned, is very, very exciting in boosting the African entrepreneurship, because what it does is essentially it facilitates inter-African and global trade. And but there's an animal in the room, and we know that it is COVID, okay? But we also have another animal that we need to deal with, and that is the issue of standards, making sure that our products are actually accepted. Standards and conformity assessment are, these are the technical barriers to trade, and the SPS, because without dealing with the issue of standards and making sure that our products are accepted, those products will not go anywhere. So as we are moving towards the single market and implementing the single market, I think with effect from July or going beyond July, given that the dates have now obviously going to be delayed because of COVID, we need to realize that the single market will require for us to implement our harmonized standards so that our products can be accepted across the continent and beyond as well. So looking at the impact of COVID-19 in relation to the continent, in relation to ASO, which is the Continental Standardization Situation or Standards Body, the impact of COVID-19 to the labor markets at a glance, according to ILO, they say 68% employed, people that were employed have been impacted. And as of the 29th of April 2020, ILO estimated that a proportion of the workers living in countries with, within this continent have actually faced a number of challenges, including closures of companies. From 81 to 68% of these have been lost over the COVID period, which is quite significant. So what does this mean? If you interpret this information, what it actually means that there's an opportunity for entrepreneurs on the continent. Those people who have lost their jobs and those people who have lost formal employment are now looking at entrepreneurship, and here's an opportunity for youth. And then also we've seen that because of the lockdowns, significant lockdowns, it's actually reduced the working hours by at least 10.5%, meaning that, it's either you're hardly employed, you're just doing 2 hours a day. Again, the issue of entrepreneurship kicks in. So in as much as COVID-19 has had negative impacts on the continent, we have to realize that there are positives that have come out of this, in that we can now look at how we can become more productive as entrepreneurs, given that we have this extra time on our hands, that we can make use of to produce some of our products. Next slide. So, opportunities and challenges. That's where we are. We are at the crossroads, isn't it? But fortunately, thanks to African Shared Value and KCB, we thank you so much for this opportunity to our youth to, provide such a platform for us to discuss where are these opportunities. As I said earlier on, as we are implementing our African Continental Free Trade Area, leapfrogging the fourth industrial revolution. I cannot emphasize that, more, because I'm actually the champion of the African fourth industrial revolution strategy and roadmap. So one of my challenges is to come up with a clear strategy as to how Africa is going to navigate its way through the single market, leveraging on technology, leveraging on various, technologies. So the opportunities are there. As we heard before, we have people who are into poultry, into all sorts of, horticulture, there's cotton, all sorts of things. But we also need to realize that, as I mentioned before, the perceived role of harmonized standards must be well understood by all our youth entrepreneurs, and they also need to participate in the harmonization process. In other words, if there are products which are specific to yourself or specific to your market, you might want to, submit a new work item to say, look, I'm producing this product. It's unique to Africa. It's never been produced abroad, and I need a standard. and be part of the solution rather than sit back and wait for standards to come. Because it won't be accepted unless the standards are actually part of your production process. Local sourcing partners, we also need to identify who these local sourcing partners are. Entrepreneurship under the African Continental Free Trade Area also means financing, as I mentioned before. So coming back to our question, can the free trade area be an answer to Africa's economic recovery? I say yes, indeed, it can be. It can be a solution. It's a big opportunity. Coming to the end of my presentation, I just wanted to highlight this, John, that what standards are actually needed. Firstly, we have primary technical adopters of standards. We also have ASO, which is process, these are the process owners of harmonization on the continent. We also have a lot of work that is being done internationally. Most of our standards bodies on the continent are actually part of the ISO, the IEC, the ITU, the ITU, and the ATU as well. And the need for us to be able to interpret the decisions and the declarations and also the resolutions of our political leadership. In other words, I'm saying we've got our work cut out as youth entrepreneurs. We need to understand what is happening on the continent. And as I said, we need to create confidence amongst our stakeholders, going beyond our borders as well, so that we can brand our products and so that we can move our goods and services across borders. Next slide. This is just to show you what it looks like, the hierarchy of standards. At the top, we have our international body. We know those. There's ISO, there's IEC, ITU, there's so many, actually. And then on the continent, the body that I'm representing today as a past president, we have what we call the African Regional Standards Organization. And at a national level, as an example, we have the national. So you need to, in your country, identify with your national standards body and understand how your national standards body can support you to make use of the national standards, the regional standards, and the international standards as well. And again, this is just to show you in a picture form under the Continental Free Trade Area. Standards are necessary in procurement. They're necessary in technical regulations. I think, John, you spoke about that already. Occupational health and safety. We are talking about COVID, so we can't run away from that. And the issues around environmental protection and trade policy as well. And here is a slide which I find very interesting. The contribution that Africa is making today. Africa is in an $80 trillion global economy, meaning that we still have a lot of work to do. I see this as a challenge. That's all I can say. I see this as a challenge. There's a lot of work for us to do to be able to play a part in producing goods that can contribute to the globe. Next slide. So in conclusion, I just want to end by saying that, yes, we are implementing our Continental Free Trade Area. The rat race starts right now. If you haven't started, I know some of us have not yet, we're not yet ready to go beyond borders, but we're planting a seed. Today, we're planting a seed through this e-summit. And I hope that all of us can realize that we all have a piece of a pie that we can contribute, to this $2.5 trillion economy that we are about to implement. And let's not be afraid. Let's take advantage of this e-summit. And once again, thank you to Africa Shared Value and KCB for sharing this platform with our youth entrepreneurs. We hope that it's been useful. And we hope, myself and John, John from the regulatory side, I'm from the standard side, we can work together and we can help our youth to be more interested on our continent and to realize that the opportunities are immense. Yes, the challenges are there. We'll never, undermine or underestimate the challenges that we have. But at the end of the day, the onus is also on us to play our part, to be part of this solution as we go beyond borders. I think that's it.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything else to add, John.
No, I was just listening, and clearly it's chiming and resonating with me right throughout. It brought to mind one of the comments from, I think it was Nicole in the earlier session from Nigeria, where she was talking about the importance of research for young entrepreneurs in putting together their business case. And, why not, right from the start, think beyond borders? What would your proposition, what appeal would it have beyond the borders of the country in which you're operating? How could you more meaningfully source from your neighbours? Because I think we said when we were talking offline before, Eve, if you don't do it, probably somebody else will.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Definitely everyone is waiting for this opportunity. And I'm sure, I have a lot of discussions. I was talking to one young man in Ghana. Actually, he's doing fish, and he's trying to export some of the fish that he has. He's a fish farmer, actually. And, the challenge that he was experiencing was how can he get his fish to be accepted in different parts of the world, in East Africa and in Zimbabwe. And then we started talking about branding. We started talking about standards. We started saying, do you understand the regulatory environment that is in that country? That could be a start. Yeah. So I think I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Yeah. But very interesting you brought that one up here, because I had a case not so long ago, a similar one. Fish farmers in Gambia with a ready market in Mali, but getting it across to Mali in terms of standards, in terms of transport difficulties, in terms of technical barriers, proving too difficult right now. And I think the young entrepreneurs have to raise their voice
sure.
to make that heard.
Yes.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
Dr. Eve?
They can't stay quiet.
Dr. Eve and John, I certainly know I join everybody on this webinar in thanking both of you for your insightful contributions. And I think if there's anything I take from the conversation is that we really need a paradigm shift, right from opportunity identification through to growing and scaling our enterprises that begins to see our markets not just as those within our own national territories, but as as people often say, making the continent and our world our oyster. And I certainly thank the pair of you for your insights into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in the areas of regulation and standards. And it's quite unfortunate because of the technical glitches that we had and how much time that took up that we won't be able to take any questions and answers. But I do know that the conversation will continue on many of our social media platforms. Thank you very much, John, and to you, Dr. Eve, as well.
Thank you.
That there was our session on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and a big thank you to our contributors for their insights.